the President Ford launched an official Operation Babylift, which that's where I came in. And that's when the Air Force started evacuating these babies out officially. And my aircraft, the C-5A Galaxy, was the first official aircraft to start the evacuation of these orphans that were funneling into Saigon. And President Ford ordered the evacuation of over 3,000 kids. And of course, as my airplane was the first to start this evacuation, unfortunately, we ended up crash landing in the rice paddies outside of Saigon. April 3rd, 1975, I was on alert duty. Alert duty is a 24-hour duty where it starts at 0700 hours one morning and it runs until 0700 hours the next morning. So on the 3rd, I was performing my duties, and I made it back to the base before midnight, before curfew, and I went to my barracks, and I went to sleep. And right around 06:55, I heard this loud knock on my barracks door, and it kept knocking. I woke up, and when you're on alert, you always have your bags packed because you can fly out at any time. So at 06:55, the CQ charge of quarters knocked on my door. Sergeant Wise, you've been alerted to fly. So are you sure? Because I'm looking at the clock. I'm saying, oh, it's almost 7 o'clock. I should be off duty. Normally, I fly on the DC-9 Nightingale, and that's an aircraft that's specially designed for aeromedical evacuation. I mean, we have seats, and we have ICU on board. We have stanchions for letter patients. And it's a fully equipped aircraft designed for medical care. So I see this DC-9 on the tarmac with the engines running, and I'm thinking, wow, they're getting ready to leave. They're gonna leave without me. So I'm racing up to this aircraft, trying to figure out, hey, waving them down. So they opened up the door and said, Sergeant Wise, what can we do for you? I said, well, I've just been alerted to fly. I'm supposed to be on this aircraft with you. They said, no, well, this is just a training mission. I said, oh, okay. So I'm thinking, wow, maybe I am off duty. So I go into the squadron, and I go inside. They said, Wise, just stick around. We'll be having a briefing real soon. So 2 or 3 hours passed, and we still hadn't had the briefing. And finally, they called us into the briefing room where the wing commander, base commander, all these big shots in the briefing room. And that's when we learned that Saigon was about to fall, and President Ford had ordered Operation Babylift, the launching of Operation Babylift. And our crew that they assembled will be going into Saigon to airlift thousands of orphans out of Saigon, and that we would not be using this DC-9 Nightingale, that we will be using the Air Force's largest aircraft, which was the C-5A Galaxy. To my surprise, I'd never flown on a C-5, especially in an aeromedical evacuation capacity. So there was the C-5 was parked there at Clark on the tarmac. So we got a chance to do an orientation, a quick orientation, learning the aircraft by way of the loadmasters and engineers that worked the aircraft. So at that point, we had to decide, we had to put together a list of things that we needed to take with us as far as what we thought the babies may need, milk, diapers, water, juice, that sort of stuff. So we had all that stuff placed in the aircraft, and after that, we took off, headed to Saigon. And we had 2 medical teams on the board, and then we had another medical team that met us there in Saigon that flew in on a 141. So once we got to Saigon, it was very hot, and they had our aircraft isolated at the far end of the tarmac. And once the doors opened, I could see all the heat coming in the aircraft because the air conditioner was off. It was very, very hot. And when the doors opened, I could see busloads of babies lined up down the runway, the flight line there. And those kids had been in those buses waiting on us to arrive. And once we arrived, we offloaded our cargo, and we offloaded what they call howitzers, and got them off the aircraft, and then we started enplaning the kids. And we started with the infants by placing them upstairs in the C5 in the crew compartment. So we formed this chain line where we would pass the kids up the ladder and place them in their seats. And all the older kids and adults and litter patients were positioned in the cargo section on the floor. We didn't have seats down there. The only seats that we had in the cargo section were catwalk seats, were the jump seats along the side of the aircraft. And we put the older kids in those seats, but the adults and the crew, such as myself, the litter patients, we sat on the floor. Imagine this, the floor. What we did, we used military blankets spread across the entire cargo floor. And we used military cargo tie-down straps across our laps to secure us in for takeoff. And I remember the door closing and the engines starting up, and all of a sudden this fresh, cold air started coming through the cabin, which we really, really needed because it was so hot. And of course, the stench of these kids needing diaper changes and things like that, it was pretty raw. So once we got loaded up, and our itinerary was to go to Clark, refuel, and then on to Travis Air Force Base, California, where President Ford was going to meet us and welcome the first orphans to America. So we took off. 15 minutes into the flight, normally when we fly over a combat zone, we usually cruise at an altitude between 35,000 and 50,000 feet. So we had taken off, we got up to about 25,000 feet, or close to it, and suddenly this loud explosion happened, or this loud noise, boom, happened. And I looked back, and I saw the rear cargo doors and ramp rip off the aircraft like it was really never attached. And we were at 23,000 plus feet. And I remember seeing the sky, the blue sky, the white clouds, and the cold air. And everything that we had placed in the rear of the aircraft or aft of the aircraft went out with the doors. And I remember hearing the screaming and yelling, and a lot of fog in the air. I remember being thrown about. I'm not sure if I grabbed the cargo tie-down strap or not, but I got to the point where I tried to breathe and I couldn't breathe. And at that point, we were in what they call a rapid decompression. So all the oxygen in the cabin had left out the cabin when the doors went out. So at 20-something thousand feet, we didn't have anything to breathe. Unlike upstairs, they had the fallout mask, where the mask, once the rapid decompression occurs, the mask automatically dawns and you're able to give yourself oxygen. But we didn't have that luxury downstairs. All we had were walk-around bottles, which were stationary. They were positioned in different sections of the aircraft. So that meant you had to leave your position and go to it. But during the rapid decompression, all sorts of debris and things were being bounced about and sucked around. So everybody downstairs didn't have anything to breathe. So I remember seeing bodies sucked out. I remember the coldness. And at that point, I knew it was abnormal to see the sky. But at that point, I tried to stay focused because I never thought I was going to die. I didn't have time to think about that. But the screaming, the yelling, and the fear around me was saying otherwise. So therefore, I didn't have time to be afraid because I was unable to breathe. I tried to breathe, but I couldn't breathe. So the pilot, what he did, he tried to turn the aircraft around and go back to the base at Tonsanute Air Force Base, Saigon. And when the doors blew off, that broke the hydraulic system that was a part of the aircraft. So the pilot had trouble maneuvering the aircraft. So what he did, he would descend down and try to pull the aircraft up to break its descent, the speed of descent. And he'll go down and pull it up. He got to the point where we were over the South China Sea when the doors blew off, by the way. And so instead of crash landing in the South China Sea, he tried to make it back to the base. And he realized that he wasn't going to make it. He ended up bellowing down on one side of the Saigon River, and we went airborne again. And we just barely cleared the other side of the river. And the aircraft bounced and broke apart. And keep in mind that when we bellied down, we had the belly full of passengers. And of course, I was down there myself. And the crew compartment, which was upstairs. Now the C-5, from the wheel to tail, is a 5-story aircraft. So when we bellied down, the whole bottom just demolished. It was flattened, and debris was scattered for miles. And the crew compartment where the babies were, that part slid off the belly of the cargo section like a toboggan. It slides off, it broke away, and it rolled over and kind of slid off. So we only lost 2 kids in the crew compartment. But in the cargo compartment, we lost everybody. I found out later that I was the only survivor out of nearly 200 out of that cargo section. Air America, which is an arm of the CIA, they cordoned off the crash site because as soon as the plane crashed, the local villagers just raced to the crash site, just pillaging the crash site, just taking whatever they could. And so the CIA or the Air America people, they started cordoning off the crash site so we could try to keep these people from taking the belongings of crew or whoever was there that was part of the rescue. The CIA saw me off to a distance in the burning wreckage, and my uniform was a white shirt with dress blue trousers. So they saw my white shirt off to a distance and said, wow, we better save the medic's body so it won't burn. So once they got to me, they found me hanging upside down, my left leg entangled in wire cable, and my head was open, my eyeball hanging out, my chest, They said, well, we better save his body so it won't charge. So they got to untangling me, and then they said, wow, this dude's still alive. So they rescued me and placed me in what they call a triage situation, where the most severe patients get evacuated ahead of the least severe. So I was in line to be evacuated by helicopter to the Seventh-day Adventist Hospital. I don't remember any of that, but I do recall hearing helicopter blades in my unconsciousness. But so I was taken to Seventh-day Adventist Hospital. They thought I was going to die. They just, matter of fact, one lady, Sister Susan McDonald, she was a nun and a nurse. She saw me when I was brought in, and she just started praying for me. She didn't think I was going to make it, and described how I looked, because I met her years later. I stayed in the hospital there in Saigon. I had to go through multiple surgeries, which I don't remember. And I remember I was told that I was in shock. You know, when you're in shock, I guess your body defenses just take over, your subconscious take over. And I wouldn't allow anybody to treat me because I feared I was in a war zone. And so the next day, my commander at Clark Air Base, they sent the DC-9 in to pick me up and the deceased bodies and bring them back to Clark, which I don't remember. So I woke up 2 or 3 days later in intensive care at Clark Air Base Hospital. And once I woke up from that, I had to go through surgery again. I went through multiple surgeries. And I spent approximately 6 months in the hospital. The doctors thought I wouldn't be able to see out of my left eye. They thought I'd be a vegetable. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, oh no. I said, of course, the Lord, He's the boss. He's the decider. And by me recovering in the Philippines at Clark Air Base Hospital, only person that was in my life at the time was my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and a couple of good friends that would check on me. But my family didn't know what I went through. And actually, they didn't know what I went through until 9 years later when they saw me on national television, 2020 interview I did with Barbara Walters, and they saw the wreckage and learned about the story of the Babylift. They couldn't believe that I went through all that, because when I came home from the Philippines, I never talked about it. And back then, those days, America wasn't showing Vietnam veterans much love. They called us baby killers. And of course, I didn't want to talk about what I went through. I'm all scarred up, and people would ask me what happened to you when they see my face. If I wear short pants, if I wear a short sleeve shirt, they see my scars. And I just tell a little fib and say I was in an accident, because America wasn't feeling the love for the veterans, Vietnam veterans, during those days. It was important for me to tell my story, as I think it should be for other veterans, to release the pain and that you've been holding in for so long. Like I said, it took me 9 years before I was able to talk about it. And once I spoke about it, I felt the relief, I felt the stress relief instantly, because I no longer felt like I was a baby killer. I felt like America realized that we did something good in Vietnam. We served our country. The ones who were enlisted and the ones who were drafted, we served our country. And the respect was finally given. Once they hear your story, they give you respect and realize that, wow, you went through all that. I didn't know it. And for me to share my story with others, I think it gives them an avenue for them to feel better about what they've contributed to our country, and the sacrifices they made for our country. And after years of pain and suffering, you just feel better once you talk about it. April 4th, I call my second birthday. That's my second chance at life. My biological birthday is March 11th, and my second birthday was April 4th. And I felt as though I had just turned 23 years old. And prior to the airplane crash, I would have bet money that I had another day coming. My birthday was March 11th, and the crash was 3 weeks after my birthday. So I was a brand new 23-year-old when the plane crashed. And it was at that point when I realized that no one's promised tomorrow. And I was a young 23, healthy, athletic, young single man that traveled the world. I got to see the world at a young age. And once that plane crash happened, that rocked my world. I realized then that no one's promised tomorrow. My second chance allowed me to have a beautiful daughter. My second chance at life allowed me to raise 2 Filipino boys that given me grandkids. My second chance at life allowed me to retire from not only the Air Force, but my second chance in life allowed me to retire from the Postal Service. Yes, Fragile Delivery is about me growing up in Flint, Michigan, and talking about the fears of having to go to war, knowing that each year thousands of veterans, thousands of soldiers were dying, and I knew that when it was my turn to go, I had a decision to make. Should I go in the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines? So I decided to go in the Air Force. And when I did my thing in the Air Force, I come across this situation called Operation Babylift. And Operation Babylift was about these fragile little kids and babies that was caught up in this war that was no fault of their own. And my part in these babies during the fall of Saigon was to get them out of Vietnam and for them to be caught up in another tragedy such as an airplane crash. I felt there was a story that needed to be told through my vision, through my eyes, from what I saw, and sharing the story about these babies surviving an airplane crash and these babies growing into adult life and being adopted all over the world. And Fragile Delivery allows me to reconnect with some of these kids that I helped airlift, and I was able to reconnect with them after they become adults, and sharing what I went through and how I care for them in their youngest days of life. And I thought Fragile Delivery would capture my life story as it pertains to Operation Babylift.